All right. My name is Zarna Tanna, and I'm the presenter, and we will be going through this webinar this afternoon. With me in panelist, we have Helen Wong and Yao Dong to assist you in answering any questions that you would raise in the webinar Q&A function. We aim to answer all the questions that you raise in today. However, if any being missed, the webinar slide deck and the Q&A summary will be forwarded to all the registrants in the next few days. And the details will also be available in the class education page, and the link is below. Before we proceed, we'll look into the disclaimers. So please kindly note that any information which is shared through within this webinar is not to be treated as any financial or investment or tax advice. Please consult your qualified practitioners, brokers, or fund auditors, or conduct your own research around scenarios involving complexity. The webinar is prepared and presented to make class processing experience seamless. So again, like how we mentioned in the webinar series previously, these are the 10, 11 steps that were mentioned to you by our onboarding team. And what we have done is grouped these steps into 4. And today we'll be discussing about step 3, reconciliation. And the agenda for today would be discussing about the tax statements, looking into an overview of what tax statement is, what are the options for you to process the tax statement, any common errors that you could encounter while processing tax statements, how to revalue investments, period updates, any errors that you could encounter, modified events, looking into the exception reports and any common errors, and market value adjustment in the end. Please note any words underlined in the slide deck are linked to class knowledge base articles for your relevant topics. So what is a tax statement? So looking into the simplistic picture, an investment that is held in any trust, whether they are listed or unlisted trusts, ETFs or staple securities or any managed funds, the fund would receive an income in the form of distribution, whether this distribution is received via cash or a reinvestment. So a tax statement is issued for these distributions received, and those tax amounts are broken down into various attributions or components. So from processing point of view, you will have 2 business events to record for these distribution income in class. So first would be a distribution cash or a reinvestment event. Second, there would be a corresponding distribution tax statement for the same. So class has designed a tax statement console to help you process your annual tax statements automatically for these securities. And please note, these console will only be available at the fund level. From FY 2024, there is a requirement for a new trust income schedule in the tax return where all the entities that receive any trust income are required to complete this particular schedule. So class team is currently working on this and updating with the complying standards. So what are the options for you to process tax statements? So there is an automated process where you can process the tax statements via the console. There is an OCR functionality where you can upload a PDF file of your tax statement in the tax statement console, and all the tax statement would get uploaded and your components will be available via this PDF uploading file. Third option is if your provider with a wrap or a platform feed is active, and if they support a data feed for tax statements, you could get these tax statements automatically via the feed. And last option is you could enter the tax statement manually if none of these 3 options are available for you to enter. So looking into the options for automatic tax statement console, how you could process this is by going to the fund level and going into periodic processing and tax statement console. So we will look into the fund level for demo purposes shortly, but just giving you more information is from FY 17-18 financial year onwards, class automated these tax statement templates for you. What they did was, for any users who provides tax statements as a template to support, the tax statement team is applying all these ratios so that you can use the tax statement automated template and process this automatically without any manually changing or updating any tax components from your end. So basically, it's all done automatically, applying all the ratios. So it would save a significant amount of time for you from processing point of view, and also it would reduce any chance of human errors. So we have established a correct process for how you could provide a sample tax statement to support team so that our tax statement team can apply these ratios and make these tax templates available for you for automation. And here is the help guide that you could click on how you could provide these tax statement components so that our team can assist you. You can also look into the tax statement release schedule where a list of all the automated tax statement templates are available for you for that relevant financial year. So you will be able to know whether that security is available or released by our team for you to process this automatically or not. So if I click on this schedule, this is how it's going to look like. So if you click on template 2023 financial year, if you're working on 2023, and if you want to know whether that security is available for template automation, if your fund is a managed fund, you click on the managed fund link and you can search for the relevant security and the status. If it's showing as released, that means the tax statement automation is available for this particular security, as an example. And how to process tax statement via console is basically you go to the fund level, you go to periodic processing and tax statement console. And here is the place where for any cash distributions that you processed, these tax statement automated templates will be available for you to process the tax statements. So please note that class would prioritize the automation template for ASX securities as most of the investments issue these tax statements earlier on during the financial year. So based on our past experience, our team is able to complete these automated templates by September each year. So there are 3 checks is to ensure that you need to ensure that all of these 3 things are processed correctly prior to processing the tax statement via the console. First, you need to ensure that the buys and sell of the transactions of these securities are entered correctly up to 30 June. So that means your holdings in class needs to match with your investment source documents. Second, you need to ensure that all the distributions, whether this is cash or a reinvestment, and they have been correctly recorded up to 30 June. And then you go to the tax statement console and process these tax statements. So the date of the tax statement, by default, class will use 30 June as the effective date for each tax statement. But there could be certain situations where you need to ensure that you need to use a prior date to 30 June. For instance, if all the units are sold before 30 June, and if there are any cost-based adjustments in the tax statement, then the tax statement date needs to be processed prior to 30 June. Second, if you have a fund where it's the ECPI calculation method is changing from 100% segregated to an unsegregated period or any segregated to unsegregated period, then in such scenarios, your tax statement could be processed prior to 30 June as well. And we will look into examples in the next slides. So here is just an example screenshot for you to why it is important to ensure that your investment holdings in class need to match as per your investment source documents prior to processing your distributions and tax statement events. So say, for instance, when you're processing a distribution event via an income announcement by clicking on the generate income functionality, which we discussed in the previous webinar. So in this example, in this Magellan Global Fund investment, there was an income announcement for 5.11 cents as a distribution event. Class would automatically calculate this amount, multiplying the income announcement by the quantity that the fund had held. If your quantity was incorrect, that means this multiplied by your income announcement, your gross payment will be incorrect. So it will cause you more issues for reconciling the fund. So hence, it is important to ensure that these 3 checks are correct and they have been processed correctly prior to processing the distribution and the tax statements. Now, looking into the option for tax statement console for platform or wrap investments. So platform or wrap providers, they use different ratios for processing the tax statements. So these ratios could be different to these investments that are directly held by the fund. So class uses the ratios for the automated tax template for directly held securities. Okay, so if you would still wish to use the tax statement console for processing the tax statements and not use the tax statements that is available by the platform or wrap providers, you can still use the automated template, but please note that the ratio may be different. And second, if you have such investments, how to process the tax statements via the console, I'll show you as an example. So we look into the demo front. So for instance, if you process the cash distributions, which are directly held and not via a platform or a wrap account, that means any distributions processed, the tax statements will be available over here for you to process. To process the tax statements, you can either click on the three dots on the right-hand side, click on New, and you will be able to see all the tax components are automatically calculated by the system, and it's entered into the other income based on the ratios that our tax team has applied, and you can just click on Submit. Okay. But say, for instance, if your fund is linked to a feed, then you will not be able to see those securities in this section automatically. So in this example, let's have a look for which securities are not available. So if you go to Feeds console, and in one of the wrap or platform account, you have linked AMP Custom Super and iShares. So these are linked to the platform feed. And I cannot see these two securities in my tax statement console, even though if I've processed the cash distributions. So in this case, if you still want to use the console, you click on the retrieve functionality here, and you will be able to see the number of distributions processed and the securities. So you select all, or you can select individual investments, and you click retrieve, and hence you will be able to see those securities again in your console to process the tax statement. If none of these options are okay for you, you could also have a last option as to process these tax statements manually. How to process the tax statements manually is by going to Transactions, Fund Income, and Distribution Tax Statement. There are a few advantages and disadvantages for using this tax statement console. So the advantage is that you can process these tax statements if you have a nil distribution or any negative distributions. The disadvantage is that all the tax components that you need to allocate into the attribution amounts, it needs to be entered manually. And that could either cause a lot of time consuming process or it could cause human errors as well. So it's up to you and your choice and up to your own fund situation in which option is much suitable for you, but it's best to use the tax statement console for automation process. We look into some common errors on what you could encounter for the tax statement when you're processing this. So let's take an example of this error that is showing you as annual tax statement cannot be processed as the net distribution amount is not equal to the sum of the related cash distribution. So let's look into the demo front, and this is for Synergy as an example. So if you click on the three dots, click on New, what this means is your total cash distributions needs to match with your net distribution. So 199 should be equal to this total amount. In case if you have any unreconciled distribution, for instance, if I change this to 99, then my unreconciled distribution will be 100. So there should not be any unreconciled distribution. Your total cash distribution should be equal to your net distribution. In case if you have entered all these tax components and you're comparing it to your investment source document, and if I have entered, say, interest for $99, and I would still have $1 as an unreconciled distribution, then you could consider to use a tax exempt amount field as an adjusting balance. However, please don't take this as an advice. It's just from processing point of view, and we have provided a help guide in the FAQ tax statement console detailing the same. Another error that you could encounter is a bad request error. So in an instance, what if you have no unreconciled distributions and your unreconciled distribution is 0? And that means your cash distribution is matching to your net distribution. However, if you submit this event, you get a bad request. That means you need to check if there are any negative cash distributions. So console does not support negative cash distributions. So in this instance, you could either consider to adjust your cash distribution with a positive value. So you can enter 1st of March 2023 cash distribution as 199, or second option, you could process this tax statement manually. As class, tax statement console does not support this. Another error you could encounter is unable to apportion annual tax data due to a system problem. So please retry in a few minutes. It would be worthwhile to double check what's your cash distribution showing. If your cash distribution show amount is 0, the tax statement console will not support this for an nil distribution. So in this instance, you could consider to use a manual tax statement to process this tax statement. So sometimes you may also encounter, so if you've already processed a tax statement for investment, and later on you realize that there were certain cash distributions which you missed to process, and then you're trying to process these cash distributions, you get this warning that an annual tax statement has already been submitted for this holding account. Please reset the annual tax statement event up to the updated data. So this means that you will have a reconciliation issue. So if you have already processed a tax statement and later process a cash distribution, you get this status as a reconciliation issue. So we will take an example on how to fix this. So we go to the tax statement console and we look into the Magellan Global Fund. So you will be able to reconcile, say that what would have happened is you would have processed only 5,500 as cash distribution as in tax statement. And later you processed a few cash distributions, which is causing a mismatch of data. To fix this, you can click on the three dots on the right hand side, click on view. There is no option to delete a tax statement via the console. So instead, there's an option to reset, which means it deletes at the back end. So when you click reset, you will be able to see that the total distribution is 5807, which is the earlier on. And you can again click on the three dots new and submit the tax statement with the correct cash summary distributions. And this will resolve your reconciliation issue that you previously had. So it's showing as complete now. And the tax statement component is matching to your distribution process component as well. Now, this error, sometimes you could encounter when you're trying to delete a tax statement. For instance, this is a very common error that support team would receive. So the error suggests that the open parcels from this event have already been matched. Roll back the period of date or undo the manual parcel matching for Transurban Group. And the parcel date is 30 June 2023. Now, in my example, I have not run any period update up to 30 June that I can see for FY 2023 financial year. And I will just give you for demo purposes. So a 30 June 2023 period update has not been run. So that means, as per the error, it suggests that manually update the parcel matching. So how to do this is what I'm going to show you now. So the investment is Transurban and the parcel is 30 June 2023. To unmatch the parcels manually, you go to periodic processing, maintain parcel matches. You search for the security, and the parcel for the tax statement was 30 June 2023. So you click edit. You see these boxes are ticked. That means your parcels have been matched to the purchase parcels. To unmatch this, you untick the box and there's an option to save. Do the same for the other tax statement as well. When you have unmatched the parcels, later when you try to delete the tax statement for Transurban Group, so let's go to the console, and I want to delete the tax statement which is processed for Transurban, you click on view, reset, which means it's a delete from the console point of view. You will be able to delete, and hence this error will not appear. Well, now we've looked into the tax statements. So the second is revaluing investments. So class sources the market prices for the listed securities as well as managed funds. And the source is from ASX reference point as well as IRIS fund data. So if your scope of these prices is showing as community as per the screenshot, which means that the price data is available on the daily basis in the business level. How to check the price for these securities? So we look into the fund. So you go to investments, browse holding accounts, and this is for, say, Transurban Group again. So you click on the three dots on the right-hand side, you go to security issue prices, and here is where you can find all the daily price data. If the scope is community, that means it is at the business level and available for all the funds that are held for these securities. You can manually override this price as well by clicking on plus add and entering the effective date and select the relevant price type. A terminating price means that this price will only be for the effective date. Continuing price means this price will get applied from the effective date until the next security issue price is added. Okay. And if you add this manually, the scope will be the fund scope. So it's only for this relevant fund, and it will show your user email as added by. You can also edit or delete any manual security issue prices that is added by the user. Mainly, this functionality is used for listed securities, for custom holding accounts, if you would like to update the valuation, or for FIG user security investments. If you have created these securities yourself by user, then this functionality is utilized. You can also use a holding price valuation functionality for any unlisted securities. So say, for instance, for this functionality, you go to investments, browse holding accounts, select the relevant investment account, and you click on holding price or valuation. And basically, you will have two types in this. You can either choose the price, which means this price that you're updating is per unit, or you can select the valuation type. That means it's combining the total valuation amount that is as per your investment source document. So in this case, if I choose as valuation, that means 500,000 is going to be the valuation for this particular security in your statement of financial position. If you select, say, $5 and select price, that means the system will calculate automatically per unit price with your quantity that the fund is held and will be available with a total amount in your statement of financial position as your valuation. And we do recommend you use this functionality for revaluing any unlisted investments. So for demo purposes, this is how you can create a new price or valuation, and you can save. And you will be able to see the previous financial years as well. Please note, any manual updates or any changes in the valuations that you make, you need to run a period update for these valuations to get reflected in your reports. So looking into the next step, that is a period update. How to process the period update and what does this do? So to process a period update, you go to the fund level, you go to periodic processing, period update, select the relevant financial year that you're currently working on, and you will be able to have an option to click on new period so that you can run the new period. When to process this period update, we will look into the next slide. But let's have a look first on what does a period update do. So a period update automatically in the background posts any depreciation expenses from the depreciation worksheet which you have processed for the property account. It also completes any unmatched parcels for your disposals events. It calculates the profits and loss on the disposal of these investments automatically. It revalues all these investments that you have made changes to, or for any investments that you have the security issue prices for. It posts any fund income tax expenses. It will allocate all your benefits to the members of the beneficiaries, and it would update all your investments, member or fund or tax registers, and all any necessary year-end adjustments that is required. Another question is, when should you process a period update, which is very common for new users? So A period update is usually a part of the year-end processing, that is 30 June of the financial year that you're currently working on. However, this can also be run at any point during the financial year as well, in situations like if you want to know or if you want to revalue an investment up to a certain date to determine the member balance. And also, if you want to know the exactly amount that is substantial or involving an entire member balance for processing an business event for situations like if you want to roll over a full balance for member or close to a full member balance, if you want to attain a correct member balance of a certain period, or if you want to exhaust a pension account, if you want to establish a pension or a commutation, in these scenarios, it's recommended to run a period update 1 day prior to these events. So either you can run a period update up to 30 June, also may be required for during the financial year, depending on your fund circumstances. When you run a period update, it how to know if it's run successfully, the status will show as view or rollback. This means a period update was run successfully. So when you're clicking on new period update, and when it's circling and it's showing as it's in progress, this means you necessarily need to wait in the fund level. You can still continue to work on any other funds or continue to look into another fund that you're currently working on or do any other things in class as well. So you need not necessarily be on the same page until the period update is in progress. And this will get refreshed once it's completed and you'll be able to see the status of the period update. What are some common errors that you encounter when you're running a period update, which is what we're going to discuss today? When you're running a period update, you could get a warning message that a fund policy for the current financial year does not exist. So please create the fund policy via settings, fund defaults. So the system is prompting you to check whether you have entered a fund policy for the financial year or not. So it is recommended for you to create a fund policy for each relevant financial year that you're working on so that the ECPI method can be recognized for your audit trail purposes or for your historical purposes. If there is no fund policy for the relevant financial year, you could get this warning so that the system will prompt you to ensure you're checking these things prior to running the period update. How to add a new fund policy is what we can look in the fund level. So we go to settings, we go to fund defaults, and you will be able to see the fund policies that you have added in the previous financial years. So please note the fund policy should be only from 1 July for each financial year and not in between of the period. So one financial year, for every financial year, you will have one fund policy starting from 1 July. If you enter any fund policy in between the period, say for instance, if you believe that if there is any deemed segregated period or an unsegregated period during the financial year, you manually want to tell the system that between 1 July to 31st December, I have a separate ECPI method. And from 1 Jan 2023 to 30 Jan 2023, I have a different method. You need not let the system know. The system is smart enough to recognize these changes of the deemed segregated period to any unsegregated period if there are any. So please ensure you only have one fund policy for each financial year, starting from 1 July. If you enter more than one fund policy, that means the ECPI calculation could be incorrect for the relevant year. So if you're running a period update, you could get certain errors, which is very common. And we will look into how you could troubleshoot from your end to fix these errors. So in our example, if you go to periodic processing period updates, go to the financial year, and you will be able to see an error like this. To see the error, you can either hover your mouse to this error to see what the error suggests, or you can also click on the link, which will give you more details on what is the error and how you could fix this. So the error is a disposal of 2,500 units of a certain security, Vanguard in this case, on 30 June 2023 cannot be matched due to insufficient holding. What does this mean? So this could either be if you have disposed more units than the fund held. So in my example, it's showing 3,000 units in the screenshot because I processed a disposal of 3,000 units. However, you can check how many units did the fund held. So if you go to investments, browse holding accounts, you search for the relevant security, Vanguard, go to the three dots on the right-hand side and go to reconciliation. So the fund had 2,500 units. However, in my screenshot here was 3,000 units. So first, it could either be if you're disposing more units than the fund had, you could get the error as in due to insufficient holding. Second is if there is any incomplete maintained parcel edit point. To check that is go to the investments, browse holding account, click on the relevant security, that is Vanguard in our case. Scroll down, go to maintain parcel edit points, and this is what an incomplete maintain parcel edit point looks like. This means a user came into this maintain parcel edit point function and tried to make any changes to the parcels, but left it as incomplete. How to know if this was incomplete? You can check the adjusted position here. The quantity is not matching to the running total. Okay, and there are no changes in the parcels on the right-hand side. And these on the left-hand side are the original parcels. So to fix this, you just click on delete. And this incomplete maintain parcel edit point is deleted. And hence this will resolve this particular error. The second error is a cost space adjustment for this security on 30 June 2023 cannot be matched. This is a very common error that you could encounter when you're running a period update. We will look into how to troubleshoot this error. If the parcel of this particular security is in the current open financial year date, so that means I'm working on 2023 right now, and the parcel for this cost space adjustment error is within the FY 2023 period, it could be if you have processed certain business events in an incorrect order. So if you have processed tax statements prior or after the disposal of the investment parcel, or if there were any corporate actions that were processed prior to the disposal events, you could get this error. So how to fix this is if you go to the fund level, you go to transactions, browse events, you group by account name so that it's easily distinguished by the security. So we're looking into Vanguard investment. So in this case, you can always look at the processed date column. If you have processed a disposal event prior to your tax statement event, which means the system will not be able to recognize the tax components that you have processed after the disposal to which it needs to match to, hence the error. In my case, I have processed on the same date, so we cannot know whether you processed which event first. So simply to fix this, you click on the disposal event, edit, save as incomplete. Go back to the security, go to the tax statement. So I'm going to process the tax statement, click on edit, and submit the tax statement first. And then you go back to your disposal event and submit the disposal event. So that means you're telling the system to process the tax statement first, and then you're processing the disposals so your tax components are matched correctly to the purchase parcels. Now, if we try to run the period update, new period. So many a times we get support queries that I have tried to fix my error. However, there is still this error which has not been resolved. So you still need to click on new period and run a new period update up to the date and process so that the error should be cleared if you have troubleshooted it correctly. So now it's showing as view rollback. That means the period update was run successfully. What happens if the parcels were for a previously closed financial year? If this was 30 June 2022, as an example, and you've already lodged 2022 financial year, and finalized it, please do not roll back the period update, which is lodged and closed. So in this case, what you could do is please contact support to rectify the error. Why that error could occur is that if the investments were fully disposed in 2023 financial year in this example, and if there's any AMIT amount or tax deferred remaining value, and this cost-based adjustment error could occur. So our class support team could assist you in rectifying this error so that you can run the period update successfully from your end. Now, sometimes you can get this warning message after you've run the period update successfully. The current pension exempt percentage varies from the last value used in the period update. This could be encountered if you have any changes in the ECPI method during the financial year. So in my demo fund, this is how the warning looks like. So what I have done is, if you go to transactions, business events, I group by type. For the first half of the financial year, the member was in completely accumulation interest. On 1st of Jan 2023, I processed pension establishment for both the members, and the fund was in 100% pension from 1st Jan 2023 to 30 June 2023 for the second half of the year. So what I did was, some users could go to the fund default policy and tell the system manually that for the first half of the financial year, I need for any income that is received needs to be taxed. And the second financial year, I need it to be 100% exempt. You need not let the system know this, as discussed previously. You delete the fund policy if you have run more than one fund policy for the financial year. You need to have only one fund policy. The system is smart enough to recognize for the period that the fund was 100% in pension or 100% in accumulation interest. So whether this was segregated or an unsegregated phase. And if I change this fund policy, and if you rerun your period update, that warning should disappear. So that means please ensure you're having only one fund policy per financial year. So let's quickly check our demo. So I fixed my fund policy. We roll back the latest period update. And you click on new period. And you process up to 30 June. And you should be able to see that the warning is now disappeared. So you fix the warning. So sometimes you could also get this period update error that it cannot run a period update that is not the latest active period update. So please ensure which is the period update that you're trying to roll back. So in this case, if I try to roll back this first period update first, you can get this error. So you should be able to roll back the latest period update in order to be rolling back the previous period update, as an example. Many a times you could encounter this error as well, which is very common. So cannot perform a benefit allocation as a weighted balance is less than 0. So in this instance, please check for any negative member balance accounts, and we have a help guide that details you all the steps. So during the financial year, a member cannot have any account balance with a negative value. So you should please review any events that you processed during the financial year and ensure no negative balances are there so that you will be able to run the period update successfully, and more details will be mentioned in this help guide. Many a times you could also have a modified event. So what a modified event is, so say for instance, if you've run a period update up to a certain period, say 30 June 2023, and then you realize that there was a certain transaction that you missed to process, and then you process that transaction in the period within this financial year, or in this period between 1 Jan to 30 June. Then if you process that transaction, it will appear as a modified event. So this event that you've processed after the period update was run does not get reflected to your reports. If you want this transaction to get reflected in your reports, you need to rerun your period update. So please note that whenever a transaction is processed after a period update has been run, the class would give you a warning message like this screenshot, whether you still want to reprocess any period update. So please ensure that you're reprocessing the period update for that transaction to get reflected. So in this example, it was 2023. Now, if your 2023 financial year was lodged and was finalized, it is not recommended to roll back this period update because your audited financials may not match with your financials and class records. So if this is material enough, then you may consider various options, whether do you want to amend the returns and only then roll back the period update and redo it. So if your financial year is lodged and closed and you still have a modified event, you could contact class support to investigate further on this issue so that we can provide you a certain workaround solution as per your own situation. Now, once your period update is run successfully, it's important for you to check the exception report. So what is an exception report? So class would perform certain validation checks at the year end that you can review in these exception reports. So by the end of the year, before you finalize or lodge your returns, you need to ensure that all of these details are validated for that relevant financial year. During the financial year, you could encounter certain warnings or error messages as well, which we will discuss now. And we also have a class help guide, which is very useful. We have listed all of the error messages that you could encounter and what are the details on how you could fix this. Here is the guide. To check the exception error report, we go to the fund level, you go to reports, exception report, and you will be able to find any warning messages or error messages that you could review to fix this before you finalize the fund. So in this case, we are looking at FY 2023. I have run the period update successfully and I'm looking into this report now. So the details says that the fund and member details. There's a warning message that the member, Ms. Garima Suba, doesn't have a TFN recorded. And this member has also not been added as an individual trustee. And Ms. Yao Dong does not have a TFN recorded as well. So the system is going to prompt you to enter all of these details, which is must as a requirement for you to enter and add this as an individual trustee if you haven't yet. And you could change these details by going to the fund and fund details and relevant for the individual trustee. To record for the TFN, you can go to the members, browse members screen, and you can select the relevant member and add all the details required. You could also encounter this distribution processing of tax statements. So the warning message suggests that the total interim distributions for the security do not equal the final distribution. This interim distribution and final distribution is a term used by class. What this means is the interim distribution means your total cash distributions, and your final distribution means your tax statements. So if your cash distribution total amount does not match to your tax statements that you've processed during the financial year, you could get this warning message. And how to check this is how I'm going to explain you now. So take an example for iShares Global Bond in this case. So you go to transactions and review your business events. You group by account name, click on iShares to see what events were processed during the financial year. So in this case, you have 110.05 as total distributions. So you process the cash distributions, but you haven't processed the tax statement. So the system is going to prompt you to check all these validations. So what you could do to clear this error is go to periodic processing, go to your tax statement console, go to the iShares. That means you have generate to process the tax statement and click submit. So you see, you get this warning message. Please note that this event is dated prior to an existing period update. You may need to roll back your period update and reprocess it. So this was the warning message that we discussed earlier. So if you go to periodic processing period update, go to the relevant financial year. That means any event I processed after the period update was run will create a modified event. For this tax statement to get reflected in this financial year, I will need to roll back the period update and rerun it. But if your financial year is already lodged, please do not roll back as discussed previously. we were looking into the exception reports. So we go to reports, exception report, to see the warning message for iShares has been cleared or not. So we let the system. So now that warning message is no longer appearing for the iShares security. So this is how you can look into individual securities and look in for the events that you've processed and make sure that these are all validated. We will look into another exception report, that is ECPI calculation method changing. What this means is during the financial year, if you have any method for the ECPI that is changing, that means in my case, from 1 July 2022, 31st of December 2022, the ECPI method was deemed unsegregated. That means tax would be applied for any income that the fund would receive for 15% tax. And for the rest of the financial year, the tax will not be applied and it would be 100% exempt. So majority of the tax statements are processed as on 30 June of the relevant financial year. So which means I'm processing those tax statements during the period when it's 100% segregated, which is incorrect. So hence this error suggests you that the certain distributions that you've processed during the financial year, it needs to be looked at and reviewed at and ensure that they are processed correctly. So what you could do in order to validate this is you go to periodic processing, tax statement console, you go to the relevant security. So say, for instance, if you're looking into a security, say iShares as an example again, you go to view, click on edit, click on use distribution date. So what this would do is the tax statement would be processed on the pro rata basis based on the date when the cash distribution was processed. So that means it will no longer use the effective date as 30 June 2022. It's going to be the latest cash distribution date. However, when you click on per distribution, that means the system is automatically entering these tax components based on the distributions and it's processed pro rata basis automatically. You need not process these tax statements manually as per distribution dates. And when you click submit, and we look into the reports, exception report again, and the warning message for iShares should not appear. Let's take an example again for AMP as an example. So we have the same example for AMP, giving you the same warning message. So if I click on the three dots, new, I take the box for use distribution date. That means the effective date will be 1st of October 2022, and I click submit. So that means the system will automatically recognize for any distributions processed on the first half of the financial year, tax will be applied, and for the rest second of the financial year, no tax will be applied automatically. And when we look into your exception report and you refresh, for AMP Custom Super, the warning message should disappear. So you'll be able to see that there's no warning message for either. I've processed the tax statement and I've also cleared my ECPI calculation method. So you can do this for each security and you can check on what events were processed and validate these exception errors. So this is what, as an example, that we've gone through, and I've provided you more details. And for ECPI calculation method especially, we have a knowledge base guide. If you have processed tax statements manually, that means you need to manually apportion the tax statement and process separately as per your distribution dates. So especially in these scenarios, it's best recommended to use the tax statement console when you're processing the tax statement, so that the easy fix is to tick on the use distribution date box. Many a times, this is one of the common error as well that you could encounter, that one or more holdings in this fund have balance reconciliation errors. What this means is if you have feeds activated in your relevant fund, That means your ledger data is not matching your feed data during any point of the financial year. So if your security balance is nil as of 30 June 2023, as an example in this case, the quantity will show in red color. So that means if your quantity is 0, this indicates that the feed provider will not send any feed balance once the quantity is 0. So if your case is with 0 balance for any securities during the financial year and you're getting this error message in the exception error report, simply you could go to the relevant security, that is, go to investments, browse holding accounts. And if your security, say for instance, is 0 and is showing in red color, and your quantity is exactly matching as per your investment source document as well, you can simply click on the relevant security, click on edit, and suspend the security. So that means this will clear your warning message. However, if your investment is not dispersed and you still have quantity during the financial year, so in that case, for troubleshooting purposes, what you could do is go to investments, browse holding accounts, and you click on the 3 dots on the right-hand side for the relevant security that the quantity is showing in red color. I cannot demo this for the quantity in red color because I cannot have any feed activated from my end. But in case if this happens in your own fund, go to the 3 dots on the right-hand side, go to reconciliation. So reconciliation tab basically details you all the transactions for the relevant security. You can change the date range as well, which shows you the total ledger data and also the feed data. So that means your ledger data should match with your feed data. If this matches, the quantity in your investments browse holding account screen will show as green in color. If it's showing red in color, that means somewhere during the financial year, the ledger data is not matching with your feed data. So in these cases, please look into your investment source document. If your ledger data is correct and your holding balance is 5,200 as an example during the FY 2023 financial year and is matching with your investment source document, then you can either ignore the warning message that you're getting in the exception report, or you could contact support to clear the holding balances so that your feed data gets refreshed. And that means overnight it gets refreshed and it will no longer appear as red in color in your holding account screen, as well as it will be validated entirely in your exception report. If your ledger data is incorrect as per your feed data, when you're checking your investment source document and you realize that your quantity should be, say, 5,000 and not 5,200, that means this 200,000 as an acquisition is incorrect and it's not matching as per your investment source document, then in this case, please fix your ledger data. So it depends on scenario to scenario, and we provided you more details which you could refer to in this slide. So this is a screenshot as an example that I have taken. So in this case, this is how the difference in red in color is going to look like. So on 28th of July, 2022, there was a 214 quantity for the ledger data, and the feed data also showed 214. But somehow the end balance also is not matching. That means it's still 214 and 0. So in this case, please check your reconciliation and check your ledger data. The most important thing is that your ledger data should be correct. That means all the transactions of the acquisitions and disposals that you're processing in the relevant financial year should match with your investment source document. If your ledger data is correct, then you can continue to process the fund, ignore the warning message, or contact support to fix the warning message. Lastly, we will look into market value adjustment in your reports. So many a times class support get these requests on what this market value adjustment is. So it's basically a system calculated and can be reconciled by this formula, that is market value for current financial year less your book cost for the current financial year minus your market value for the previous financial year less your book cost for previous financial year. The system is going to calculate this automatically. I will give you an example quickly now, and this is in the 2022 financial year for Transurban Group. So if you go to reports, statement of financial position, And I will show you where this market value adjustment would appear. So you go to 2022 financial year, apply, and go to the relevant security, that is Troubleshooting Group. Click on the paperclip icon, which will take you to the account postings for more details. And this is where it's going to detail you the market value adjustment. And many a times you could get a question that how is this calculated and why is this appearing as market value adjustment for 19,000? So to know this is based on a formula. So you go to investments, browse holding account screen. So you search for the security, Troubleshooting Group, select the date that is 30 June 2022, that is the current financial year date. You can open a duplicate tab. To open a duplicate tab, you can click on the tab here over your mouse, right click, duplicate. Or you can also click on Control key on your keyboard and you go to investments, browse holding account, click on Control key and then click on browse holding account. It will also open a duplicate tab. It's just for your additional information. It's very useful when you're reconciling certain things. You can have multiple tabs open for your reconciliation. And I will select the date range, Troubleshooting Group, search for the security, select the date range of the previous financial year. So that means what the formula suggests is for the current financial year is market value, that is 20,000 minus your cost base, that is 15,000, less the market value minus cost base for the previous financial year, that is 1,000 minus 5,000. That means it's 15,000 less your minus 4,000. That means it is a total of minus 19,000. So that's the reason why it's giving you as a debit of 19,000 as a market value adjustment. Basically, you can refer to this formula in the slide whenever you encounter this market value adjustment and reconcile it accordingly. But this is how you can troubleshoot from your end to see how the market value adjustment has been calculated. If you believe that this is not calculated correctly, please contact support and we can help you and assist you in regards to why this was as a market value adjustment with a different value. So finally, we have completed the reconciliation steps, revaluation of assets, period update, and the exception error reports being validated as well. In our next webinar, we will discuss more in detail about the year-end and lodgement, and we will discuss more about exploring the class features on how to request actual certificates, your tax finalization, report generations, and handling validation errors and other related topics. And here is the link how to register for the webinar, and you could please register for the webinar. And finally, this is the step 4, which would help you to complete the year-end lodgements. And say, for instance, if any time during the point you have unsubscribed from class marketing emails, if you would want to resubscribe, here is the link and you could resubscribe and you would start to receive any emails from the marketing team for class as well. Thank you very much. I hope this information was useful for you today and hope you all have a lovely afternoon. Thank you.